Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Tour Catch-Up,
Swiatek secures back-to-back Masters titles.
Zverev seals his second Italian Open.
And the Queen's Club will host a WTA Tour event for the first time in 52 years.
Kim, Chris, today is the 20th of May and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ. 1 week and counting to the French Open in Paris, and we have made our final Masters 1000 pit stop in Rome for the Italian Open. It was business as usual for Iga Swiatek as she continued her excellent clay form to become only the third woman to win the double of Madrid and Rome in the same year. Whilst on the men's side, Alexander Zverev announced himself as a French Open contender with his second Italian Open title against surprise finalist Nicholas Jarry. With French Open wildcard controversy, the UK grass court season getting a makeover for 2025, and an action-packed cast ready to rock this week in Geneva, there is a lot to discuss as usual, even before we get to Paris at Tennis Weekly HQ.
I feel like normally now we're sort of winding down, getting ready for the French, but actually things are ramping up. I mean, Djokovic is playing in a 250 the week before Islam.
Where did that come from? When was the last time that happened? Has that ever happened?
I'm not sure he has done that. I mean, he's played like 1,000 before Islam, I think Cincinnati and those sorts of things. But, I mean, we did say last week, he was struggling for form and he needed to try and get some before Paris. And it looks like he's going to get the match practice he needs, hopefully.
These are desperate times, I feel.
He played Eastbourne one year right before Wimbledon. And I think, did he win it? And then he won Wimbledon. So maybe Geneva is going to be his magic
omen.
charm. Yeah, it's a good omen. It's worked for him once before. But yeah, I did not see that one coming either. Funnily enough, though, there has been some other news we did not see coming this week. And that is about one of our favourite tennis couples. Is that right?
Kim, this caught me off guard, and I feel like it'll catch everyone off guard. Is it true? Tsitsipas, is it back on? They were filmed, they were papped in Monte Carlo in a very fancy sports vehicle, roaming the streets of Monte Carlo. It was his, I think it was, I'm going to read this from the notes I've got. It was Tsitsipas's Aston Martin V12 speedster vehicle, which I think is quite ironic because the video I saw was going very, very slowly. But the fact that they were both in the same car is leading me to think, and a lot of other people to think, hang on, is this the Ross and Rachel of the tennis world?
They were on a break, and now they're not on a break, maybe. But I actually looked a little bit more deeply into this after you broke the news.
This is the investigative journalism we all need at Tennis Weekly.
They were spotted multiple times in Monte Carlo. They did hold hands. They were spotted daytime as well. So maybe that sort of statement from Paolo Badosa was to get Tsitsipas to make the gesture to step up, because clearly, I mean, he stepped up and he picked her up in the Aston Martin. So maybe things are back on track before the grass court season gets going.
If they're the Ross and Rachel, who are the the Chandlers and the Joeys and the what are the other two? Phoebe, Monica,
yes.
Yeah.
I
have
don't
a whole
know.
cast. Yeah. Well, they're back on, we think. And another duo that are back together, more of a bromance though, is Roger and Rafa, because I saw all over social media this week that they were both featuring in a Louis Vuitton core values ad campaign in Italy's Dolomites region. They're walking through the snow with nice rucksacks on for Louis Vuitton, and it was shot by photographer Annie Leibovitz, so quite an iconic photographer doing the business there. And yeah, I thought it was so nice to see them back together. Federer's retired, Rafa's on his way to retirement, and I think, I'm sure this will inspire lots of people to buy these rucksacks if they can.
Was it a bit cheesy? Was it a bit cheesy?
Oh, people love a bit of cheese, don't they?
I don't think it matters. It's just people love Fedor together doing stuff.
They do, don't they? That feels like, that's got legs, hasn't it? Can you see them two coming together for a clothing
TV
range.
Show, a TV
Or
show
a
would be
TV
good.
show.
A travel
Ooh.
show with them.
It reminded me
I'd
a bit
watch
of when
that.
Federer did Bear Grylls. I think he went on the Bear Grylls.
Are you saying that
thing.
Rafa is the Bear Grylls of the partnership?
Well, I'm maybe saying Rafa could be on Bear Grylls' show next time round, or maybe they could do a travel show together. I mean, it seems like every celebrity in the UK does a travel show these days.
Yeah. It
They're
wouldn't
always
be
off
I
cycling
would
through
love
Cornwall
that.
and walking
Yeah.
Love
on
that.
canals. and
canal
things.
boats. It wouldn't be Catherine's budget holidays, would it? Be Roger's expensive boutique trips.
So would Roger Federer? Would he bin off? Was it Trevor Noah?
Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
Bin off Trevor
Yeah.
Noah for Rafael Nadal. That is an instant upgrade, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
we've got not Anton
Apologies,
and
Trevor
Giovanni
Noah
in Spain.
fans listening to the podcast.
It's Roger and Rafa in Europe somewhere.
Well, another upgrade that I was going to say is that we have gone from attending the Boodles last year, and now we're the official podcast of the Boodles. So, yes, exactly. Not something that is quite not related to something fun that's happened on or not off the tennis court, tennis related, but very, very exciting. For listeners who don't know, the Boodles is an exhibition event that has almost a English garden party feel. It takes place in Stoke Park, just outside of London, and it happens from the 25th to the 29th of June, so just before Wimbledon. And we attended last year, and I think you might have seen a picture on our socials that we've put up. We're putting it up as many places as we can because we all look pretty decent in that picture, I think.
I don't wear a suit many times in the year, so it was actually quite nice to get dressed up. And certainly the food that we got,
It's like a tennis wedding is how I sort of see it. It's
Yeah, I did wear a dress that I wore to a friend's wedding, so it's sort of that aspect. And nice to see you both scrubbed up, especially you, Joel, for
yes,
once.
Joel. I honestly think, listeners, please go and check out the picture because, I mean, it doesn't happen often.
I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm really nervous for this year because that's like my one outfit. And I need to get another outfit.
You should go for maybe a linen option or something because was it tweed on a hot summer's day?
Yeah. Okay. This is
Maybe
these are
go
the tips I
shopping
need.
in Louis Vuitton and dress
Ooh,
like
yes.
one of the goats of all time. Yes, very much looking forward to the Boodles again this season. And stay tuned because later we do have an exclusive competition for our listeners. So one of you may well be able to attend the Boodles. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that one. But without further ado, we do have lots to talk about from Rome last week. The Italian Open is over for another year. And we have a repeat champion on the women's side, Iga Swiatek, winning the title for the third time in 4 years, winning it pretty comfortably in the final, it has to be said, over Aryna Sabalenka, 6-2, 6-3. Nicely does it in the final. And she's just sending her season from good to even better to brilliant. It's her fourth 1,000 title of the year. She's won 5 of the last 7 1,000. She's on an absolute roll at this level of event. Joel, what did you make of Iga Swiatek's week? Well, 2 weeks actually in Rome.
It was imperious stuff, I think, from Swiatek. And I think the worrying thing is that for Sabalenka and everyone else, I feel on the WTA tour at the moment, the Rome conditions are very similar to the conditions in Paris, and it just feels like Swiatek is on another level. And maybe there was a morsel of hope in Madrid where Sabalenka pushed Swiatek really, really deep, really, really long match. But here we did have a repeat final, but the scoreline was a completely different outcome. It was a lot more of a formality, and at the moment it's really hard to see who's going to win the French Open other than Iga Swiatek.
Do you think that the conditions in Rome being a bit heavier actually make it really hard for a big hitter to hit through Iga? Because we saw that double bagel final with Pliskova before. Big server, big hitter. This was pretty straightforward as well. I mean, there were no break points taken by Sabalenka in this final. Iga was pretty imperious on all levels, really, in terms of the winners to unforced errors ratio, the first serve percentage, first serve points won. It was all pretty good. Do you think that was a big difference between Madrid? Is that the Madrid conditions favour the big servers?
I agree. I think it certainly did not help Sabalenka. You could see it was night and day, I think, even though it was the same opponent across the net. And, with Swiatek, as you called out, the break point moments that occurred for Sabalenka. Swiatek was just ice cold on those moments, and the conditions I think did have a big part to play in it. And the fact that they are going to be very similar in Paris, it's just kind of like we're in Iga's world at the moment, and clay is just like it's just a match made in heaven for her.
Yeah, just 8 unforced errors in the entire final there, and completely dominant on the break points. And incidentally, she has become only the 3rd female player in history to complete the Madrid-Rome double now. Any guesses for who are the other 2 players to have done that?
Well, Serena must have done it, surely.
Serena Williams, in 2013. Anyone else?
Oh, Rome and Madrid, the famous Serena Williams quote. That was when Dinara Safina was number 1, and she said, oh, she did really well. She won Rome and Madrid. And then she started laughing because Serena had 3 slams. So she must have won Rome and Madrid.
Dinara Safina, Safina, 2009. And then she got to the French Open that final that year, didn't she? And lost to Kuznetsova, I believe. But yeah, I mean, Swiatek, she's so dominant at the moment, especially on this surface, in these conditions. She's only 22 years of age, and she's already got 10 1,000 titles in her career, which makes her joint 6th in the all-time record table. Serena's way ahead on 23. But given that Swiatek's so young, do you think she can eventually, get to Serena's record and break it if she continues the way she's going?
Give her 3 years and she might break it at this rate, the speed that she's racking them up. I think, to be honest, it's quite a shame at the moment that we do always want these sort of rivalries and the players to all be peaking, but it seems like no one is managing their schedule better than Iga, and no one is playing the sort of level that Iga's playing. So it does feel like if she's in the draw, you have to back her to win it. But the only time when you think maybe she wouldn't be able to necessarily always get it done is probably the slams, because the surfaces don't always lend themselves as best to her, whereas I think a lot of the Masters are actually very much right up her alley when it comes to how they play. We've got some slow hard courts in Miami. Indian Wells is not famously that speedy either. So I think genuinely she could probably get the all-time record way before she hits 30.
Yeah, I'm not sure we learnt too much that was new or different about Swiatek in Rome. We know she loves that event. She's won it twice before, but she has won her last 6 matches in a row now against top 3 players, which must give you the world of confidence, especially just before the French Open, a tournament that you've won several times already. Do you think she's perhaps more is it more dangerous for her coming up against the lower ranked players in the earlier rounds of the Slam rather than once she gets to that sort of deeper end? Would you say that's the best chance to beat her at the French Open, or the fact that she's excelling on the kind of a similar surface already this year, is anything really stopping her?
I think it was interesting that this week, or over the last couple of weeks, it was Angie Kerber who gave Swiatek like her hardest match on route to the trophy. So I think there's maybe some kind of morsels of hope and opportunity, but it certainly feels like they are going to come as a shock maybe earlier on in the draw than perhaps at the later stages, because it feels like when Swiatek does get into these matchups, she just steps it up. I mean, her head-to-head now against Sabalenka is 1-8, lost 3, and it's interesting that I think we've seen a lot of conversation around this big 3 of Swiatek, Sabalenka, and Rybakina. And sometimes I've seen conversations, should it be a big 4 with Coco Gauff, who had a good couple of weeks in Rome. But you'd almost arguably say at the moment, if you just looked at the Rome result, does it feel like Iga Swiatek is a big 1? Is she just in a world of her own at the moment on the clay surface?
I think she is in a world of her own on pretty much all surfaces except grass. Something that I do think is quite interesting is when you look at the world number 2 Sabalenka, she only has 1 title, and that one title is the Australian Open, whereas Iga has the WTA Finals, French Open, Beijing, Indian Wells, Madrid, Rome, Doha, and Warsaw. So it is very, very different, because you look at Coco Gauff, she has a number of titles herself. She has 4 titles, 3 titles for Aryna Rybakina. So it does really ask the question as to whether anyone else is as good at getting it done as she is. And it's the mentality as well as the game that's the thing that's making all the difference, because she hasn't lost a final in the last year when she's made it to that stage.
just on Sabalenka, how do you think she looks at her season so far? Because I feel like she's gone consistently deep, more or less, at the big tournaments. You know, she's made back-to-back finals, in Madrid and Rome. Yet she's always finishing, it feels like, the runner-up, and she has only got one title this season at the Australian Open. How do you think she's feeling in terms of like feeling like she's doing well, but she's not really kind of looking at her trophy cabinet thinking, I've got the rewards to show for it?
You take a slam over the other matches, and obviously she's won the only slam that's happened this year. I think she'll be very optimistic about her chances at Wimbledon. I think that one got away from her last year. I think her game is obviously very much more more comfortable on grass. It's very much a classic grass game. She's also a great doubles player, very comfortable at the net. So I think she really should be the player to beat at Wimbledon. But I do think that when it comes to matches on the tour, the mastery that Iga has over all of the other players in the top three, except for rybakina, I think it does kind of put her in a situation where Sabalenka's kind of picking up the leftovers at times, which obviously isn't necessarily the best way to be feeling mentally going into it. Even getting number one at the end of last year, and then Iga pipped her at the post by winning the WTA finals, so she had such a short stint. So it is tricky because that door is almost closed now. It's going to be a long time before someone overtakes Iga.
And we also had Americans doing quite well in Rome. We had two semi-finalists, Coco Gauff and Danielle Collins, reaching the final four. I mean, Coco Gauff, let's talk about her because she reunited with Brad Gilbert for the Italian Open this week. And we saw her do probably better, the whole of this clay season by getting to the semis. Do we see her as being in with a chance at the French? I mean, she's a former finalist there, but I feel like she's still searching for that kind of that extra gear that we know she can give us. But it just seems to be lacking at the moment. What did you make of her time in Rome this year?
It was definitely an improvement. I think we kind of fell back into the pattern of maybe thinking she isn't living up to the potential that we know she has and we know she showed previously. I think when it comes to Paris, she's such a good competitor. And that's something where Brad Gilbert obviously comes in. We talk about winning ugly. She's winning a lot of matches pretty ugly right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's something where maybe Iga isn't the best at winning ugly. When her game is off, it's not necessarily where she's at her most comfortable. We know that Sabalenka is quite good at that as well. So if they are able to play even at like 50% of their level, they will make it tough for players who are more lower ranked than them to beat them. So I wouldn't count her out. This is a positive week for her, kind of getting back to the semi-final stage. And, she's in top four in the race. She's very much right up there. So not a bad season. And I think she did peak towards the end of the season last year anyway. So she's got not many points to defend because she did go out to Ken in first round of Wimbledon. And the quarterfinals of Paris, she'd be having ambitions beyond that. So she's probably in quite a good space to try and put down a marker, improve them last year, and that's probably what I'd focus on if I was her, rather than, winning it all, just improving and keeping improving.
Yeah, particularly I think that the serve, has been one of the reasons it's been quite scratchy of late. So I think that's going to need to improve if she's going to want to go deep, at the French Open. But for American tennis, it's certainly very exciting because, Danielle Collins getting to the semi-finals, Coco Gauff getting to the semi-finals, Madison Keys also has had a great, has had great clay form so far in the clay swing. So it feels like they're attacking on all cylinders at the moment. So if there is some sort of threat potentially to an Iga Swiatek that is, a dangerous outsider lurking, it could come from one of those Americans.
I wonder which of them will go furthest at the French because I think they're all quite good prospects or picks. Outside picks, I suppose anyone, but Swiatek's a bit of an outside pick at this rate. But let's have a look at the men's event because we did have Sacha Zverev winning the men's tournament over Nicholas Jarry in the final. He won in straight sets 6-4, 7-5. So perhaps a bit of a surprise final. Also probably a surprise final four because we had Alejandro Tabilo in the semi-final and Tommy Paul as well. So definitely not the final four I think any of us had predicted. But Sacha Zverev winning this title, he has won it previously. This is his second time taking this title home, and he will be up to number 4 in the rankings as of today. His first kind of big title in a while, actually. It's the last time he won a 1,000 level event was in 2021. So he's sort of, it's probably been a long time coming. What did you make of this match? What was so good about Zverev over the past week or so, Chris?
Well, I mean, the serve was unbelievable. I think it was one of the most impeccable serving displays that I've ever seen.
Destructive.
It was wild, the numbers. I mean, he was making so many first serves as well. I mean, the first set, it was even more than his average of 80% for the match. He won 95% of first serve points,
wow.
78 on second, and Jarry only won 5 points against the serve in the whole match.
It's such a weird. It was such a weird scoreline, wasn't it? Because it felt like on Zverev's service games, Jarry wasn't getting anywhere close, and you sort of just felt like, oh, can he take it to a tiebreak and make Zverev tight? And that was pretty much the only strategy available to him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I was watching it, and I'm not just saying this because I think I'm not the biggest Zverev fan, given a lot of the allegations that are out there at the moment. But I do think that on those break points, on the key points, he does back off. He doesn't have a champion's mentality. He won 2 of 9 break points. He should have wrapped up the match earlier because he was playing so well on serve, and really should have freed him up to go after the Jarry serve because he was actually just playing pretty well on the day. But he was very kind of patient with it, almost a bit passive on some of those moments. So the scoreline, I think, very positive for him to get a Masters title. Obviously, a lot of the big players weren't here, and he didn't play against a lot of the top players. When it came to the players who've given him a lot of trouble and have taken some of the slams, like Sinner and Alcaraz. But again, very good that he was able to get it done. But you do just think, if that got to a tie-break, could that have gone another way? And for someone who's playing that well and serving that well, it really shouldn't have even been close.
Do you feel like that's the potential worry to Zverev in terms of like those moments and not getting it done quicker, particularly going into the French Open, which is best of 5. So naturally, he's going to be on the court longer, and potentially there's going to be more opportunities of him making those moments, but not fully taking them and getting it done sooner, and potentially allowing his opponent back into the match.
I mean, he's definitely not a closer when it comes to matches and winning some of the biggest titles in the game. Grand Slams, that match, obviously, we talk about quite regularly with Team in the Grand Slam final. That was almost like who
wants it? Who actually wants it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want it, but I think they just couldn't bring out any form of like game. It was almost how just please hit the ball out sort of thing. But I think he's playing I mean, his backhand is sensational. His serve is great. He's going to be in much better form than he was last French Open when he was coming back from injury. So who knows what he can do. But I do think Jarry will be thinking, if only I had just cut down some of the unforced errors and pushed it to that tie-break, because I think then it could have been a different story.
Isn't that the story of Jarry's career? I feel like he's such an inconsistent player. I mean, he's a great player. He's a great clay courter.
Fun to watch, though.
Very fun to watch. But the unforced error count is always that stat you go to, I feel, when you have a Nicholas Jarry match on paper, because it can be won and lost there. And in this final, I'd say they racked up, and it wasn't obviously helping with Zverev giving a tour de force on his serve.
I mean, Zverev also had 8 unforced errors in the whole match. Him and Swiatek, both champions, with a very small amount of unforced errors in the final there. And just funny that it's the exact same number. So, yeah, very, very clean in terms of the stats there. But Zverev, do you think going into the French Open, he is a definite contender? I mean, we saw he played very well at the Australian Open, got to the semi-finals, should arguably have got into the final. We saw his form here a couple of years ago in that match, especially against Rafa, where he had that horrendous injury occur. Do you think he's looking good for the French, or do you think he was just helped by a bit of a favourable draw in Rome, perhaps?
Well, the only player that he beat of considerable ranking was Taylor Fritz, and he's been playing very well on clay. So that is a big win. I don't think that you necessarily can see yourself as being a favourite when you haven't done it before and you haven't really had a great head-to-head against some of the top players.
Yeah.
But given the fact we've talked about this, no one is necessarily the favourite. No one is playing consistently.
It's just a bunch of contenders.
And he's definitely one of the bunch. I mean, he's got a lot to contend with at the time because he will be facing his domestic abuse trial. So that might be something that could also make it a little bit trickier for him to focus on the tennis, because that does actually kick off on the 31st of May and it goes over 8 dates across the French Open and then on into Wimbledon. So he'll be contending with a lot on and off the court.
And that's virtual, isn't it? Because, I was sort of thinking he might get to a latter stage of the French and be like, oh, I've got to go off and attend court now, which, that's what he'll have to do if that's the case. But it is an online trial, I believe.
He's able to, he might be summoned, he might have to attend, but it's not expected that he will attend.
Is there going to be like a Nicholas Jarry fan in court, and he's going to be like, I'm going to make you come to Berlin or wherever it is from Paris?
Well, I mean, it certainly might take some of the viewership away from what's going on, because I think it will be a very big story coming up.
Especially if he does well at the French. It's really going to overshadow. I mean, it's already overshadowing his whole career, of course. We can't really talk about what he's doing on court if we don't talk about this, rightly so. But yeah, it was an interesting kind of next few weeks, I suppose, for him.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of, this week we've had in the golf at the PGA Championships, I think the world number one had to go to, he was in a jail cell before round 2 got underway, and then got out of the jail cell and went and finished his round. But again, it feels like at the French Open, this could be a PR nightmare on the hands of the French Open organisers if, as you said, Zverev does go deep.
Yeah, and how do you promote it? Those matches and covers of magazines.
How the crowd are gonna respond as well.
It really will be.
I mean, let's look at the clay season as a whole so far. We've had a number of so-called next-geners pick up the titles. Tsitsipas, Ruud, Rublev and Zverev have won the sort of big 4 tournaments on the clay build-up to French Open. Do you think, therefore, we're on for a next-gener to win this title coming up? Do you think it's kind of their time for one of those 4 to perhaps get their first slam?
I think if you're Tsitsipas, you really have to be taking this one seriously. I'm not saying that he doesn't normally, but there's a really big opportunity, and he has had a lot of experience at this level. He's made a French final before. I think someone like Ruud as well, like he's obviously really will be wanting to go one further. I'm not looking quite as much at Zverev and Rublev. I think probably because of the fact that there have been some moments where they haven't got it done at key moments. I think potentially they haven't proved themselves on the Grand Slam stage by reaching finals of slams quite as much. But, I mean, this is the opportunity for someone in that generation to get a slam. But wait, Kim, always want to ask you, who out of this lot would be your pick? Tsitsipas, Ruud, Rublev and Zverev?
Ruud, I think.
Me too.
Yeah.
I can see Joel going Tsitsipas, maybe.
I think he behaves nicely on the court.
I was thinking about the last couple of weeks and how the draw unfolded. It felt like it was on a silver platter for Tsitsipas up until the Nicholas Jarry match. I mean, he was a set-up. I think he had break points to basically take it away.
He should have won it.
He should have won it in straights, exactly. I thought he was looking like the favourite, with everyone else kind of falling around him. But he's certainly going to be up there with Roland Garros, and it's tough to count out Zverev, but at the same time, you do wonder in these really pressure-filled moments towards the end of a Grand Slam, a title he has not won and has come so close to, in that US Open final against Dominic Thiem, you still wonder and have, I think, reservations on is that pressure of that moment going to get the better of him? Because there has been circumstances in the past where his play just goes to pot, doesn't it? He throws in double faults,
backhands, moonballing,
forehands, shanked forehands, etc.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is in the context as well, just talking about French Open. Sinner has announced that he's out, right? He's not playing the French. Because
I don't think
if
we
he
know
was
that
in the
just
conversation. Yet. Oh, we don't know that. Okay. Apologies, but we'll have to wait and see.
Heavily rumoured that he won't
Heavily rumoured. It's all right. I don't have any insider knowledge from the Sinner camp. So.
He is training, so
right. Okay.
It's very much not 100% confirmed. I
Touch
do
and
think
go.
this might be one of those things that we don't love when they withdraw after the draw's been made, and therefore someone who would have qualified doesn't get the spot and they have to give it to lucky loser.
It's going to be the ultimate stress test because Yannick
We're
Sinner
gonna-
is a nice guy.
One-
he might do that.
Let's not
One-
put him in
But let's
collector
not.
set.
Yes,
then.
exactly.
Let's hope not. That's it. That's the rule.
Yeah. Draws out on Thursday, and we'll be doing our preview on Friday. But just before we move on, Tommy Paul did very well in Rome, got to the semi-finals. We were talking about American ladies doing well on the WTA side, but Tommy Paul, fantastic effort here. He's now made 2 Masters 1000 semis this season, which is great. And he beat Medvedev and Hubert Hurkacz here on the way in through to the semis. Do you think, is he someone we should be keeping an eye on a bit more? Is he kind of the American of the moment?
Joel, surely not. Surely Taylor Fritz for you.
Or is it Clayla Fritz? I mean, are
Taylor
they going to have a
Fritz.
bit of a clay court battle?
We do need that.
Who's better between them?
I think we do need that, but it's interesting because arguably, he was very close, and maybe he should have made the final in Indian Wells. But I was reading some interesting reports on talking about his level, and actually, quite a few people think that Tommy Paul's level is above at the moment Ben Shelton and Taylor Fritz. It's just his consistency is the thing that is his big issue, and he can give results like this, and it might feel surprising, but actually his level on court is very, very good, and if he applies himself, it can take him places. And I think over maybe the last few years, he maybe hasn't taken tennis seriously as maybe he could have, but I think we've seen that application a lot more recently, and he's giving us these results. And I wouldn't be surprised, if he makes a good run, a good deep run at the French Open, because semi-final here, done very, very well. I think he could, potentially continue that on.
And I was going to say, he's also impressing the A-list of Hollywood. Matthew McConaughey did a tweet about Tommy Paul. He said, looks like the early year at Tommy Paul 1 train is back on track after it was interrupted by the ankle. Looking good, TP, roll. I feel
There
like
you go.
that's a very interesting tweet. I'm not sure that's how I would tweet, but
Is this like the Ben Stiller, Rafael Nadal hype
I think it
train?
might be. He's coming
Tommy
to bat.
Paul's got Matthew
Yeah.
McConaughey. Got it.
Yeah,
They've got
but he
star
follows
power
two
behind
people.
them.
He follows 2 people who are in tennis, Djokovic and Tommy Paul. So, says
What a
a lot.
selection.
Yeah, exactly.
Which celebrity would you want in your corner or box if you were on court?
Ooh,
That's
that's
the
a
question
very
for
good
you.
one. Maybe I'll have to make it a mailbag next time. Oh, I'd love someone.
Yeah, Kim, that question's too good for this.
It's
We-
too
Sorry,
good.
I just
we
suddenly
need to
came
keep
to
that
think
for
of
a
it.
mailbag, I think.
Also, I'm like, who can
Yeah.
I say? I don't want to get this wrong.
Ellie Goulding.
Ellie
Oh,
Goulding.
I'm just
yes.
thinking, who's
To be honest,
who do we
everyone-
mention on the
Goulding for
podcast
everyone.
quite a lot?
Yeah.
She could get up and sing as if you were Roger Federer. Anyway, on that note, let's take a quick break, but we will be back in the second half to discuss French Open wildcards, the new grass court calendar being unveiled for 2025, and we'll also be announcing our exclusive Boodles competition, so do not go anywhere. Get ready for the Boodles. The ultimate pre-Wimbledon tennis exhibition is returning to Stoke Park from the 25th to the 29th of June.
And we are offering one lucky Tennis Weekly listener the chance to win a pair of stadium tickets to join us at the Country Estate for a day of world-class tennis in an English garden party setting.
where you can sip champagne, dine in style, and mingle with your favourite tennis stars.
The Boodles is located just 35 minutes from central London, and every seat in the stadium is no more than 10 metres from the court, giving every guest the ultimate fan experience on one of the UK's finest grass courts.
Tickets start from £105 and attendance is strictly limited to 2,000 per day, so booking early is advised to avoid disappointment. To book, visit www.theboodles.com. That's www.theboodles.com.
And for your chance to win a pair of stadium tickets, all you have to do is follow us on social media at Tennis Weekly Pod, like our competition post, and tag a friend that you would like to bring with you.
Maximum 2 entries per person, 1 per social channel, and the competition closes on Saturday, the 1st of June at midnight. Winners will be announced on our Round 4 French Open catch-up on Monday, the 3rd of June, so listen in to find out if you're our winner. Well, that competition sounds fantastic, if I do say so myself. So, listeners, definitely make sure you get involved for your chance to win tickets to the Boodles. And that brings us on now to a bit of Joel's game.
Yes, Joel's game is here, and Kim, I've made this Joel's game with you in mind. So I think Chris is going to be looking to you for help with this edition of Joel's game.
I will need it based on what you told me before we started recording, Joel.
I'm very intrigued. How am I going to be able to help Chris more than
Chris can help
than
himself.
him helping me?
So for all of our listeners who have not played Joel's game before, this is higher, lower, or same with career high rankings of players. And I've actually put a little category together for this week's edition of Joel's game, and it is male Spanish players.
Are you happy to take this solo, Kim?
Excellent. Yeah, I'm not sure how well I actually know their rankings or highest rankings.
Wow.
Though.
Well, that's what
I'll
I was thinking.
But I'm not leading this one.
They all just blur into one for me. So that's why I was curious to see and put Kim specifically, I think, your knowledge to test. But you are working as a team. I do believe you have completed Joel's game before.
I think we did it once.
Yeah, can you do it again? Was that just a flash in the pan?
Probably. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, if there is maybe one time to do it, it is, as I say, it's the Spanish male players edition.
Kim's mastermind topic, this.
Okay.
Gosh.
Right, we're gonna start
pressure.
with, as always, our first player. There's no skin in the game just yet, but we're gonna start with our marker, and our marker is Feliciano Lopez.
Okay.
So I say no points on offer yet, but a career high ranking for Feliciano Lopez.
I mean, Kim, I feel
13?
like I would have said 11. I don't know. So should we
Yeah.
say?
I'm gonna stop you both there because you're both.
Is it 12?
It's 12.
Is it?
Yeah,
Is
it's
it?
12. Yeah. So there you go. You've both nearly got there. So
Pat
yes,
ourselves on the back.
your marker to begin with is 12, and your first player I'm going to give you for 1 point is
Rafael Nadal.
Oh, I wonder what that could
No.
be.
Alejandro Davidovich Fokina.
Oh, definitely
I mean,
Higher,
lower.
lower, or same?
Yeah. Definitely lower. I think
Definitely
he's been
lower.
about 19, maybe.
Maybe he's pushed. Yeah, let's say 19. I agree.
Correct. Yes, it is lower. 21. He's not actually broken into the top 20 yet, which surprised me a
Okay.
little bit actually. But yeah, maybe that's on the cards at some point in the future. But yes, correct. 1 point to you both. Next player, Jaume Munar. Higher, lower, or same?
Surely lower.
I would have
think.
said lower, but
I think he's been about 29. I think he's like just been seeded at a slam before.
I don't think I've seen him in the top 20. We're agreed we'll say lower.
Lower, yeah.
And any idea on a number?
I'd have said 33.
I'll say 30.
So surprisingly, you are correct. But
Has
his
he been higher
highest-
than we think?
His highest singles ranking, I had to double check this. I've actually double checked this right now because it didn't actually sound right. He's not even been in the top 50.
Oh, he obviously hasn't been seeded at
Well,
a
he's
slam
very,
then.
very frequently brought up on this podcast. So
Highest ranking 52, which he achieved in May 2019. So yeah.
Oh,
Who
more
knew?
fool us.
well, 52 is a good number to be at now. I feel quite confident with that one.
I feel like the next one's got to be higher.
Got to be higher.
So you have 2 marks so far. You need to get 6 in total. Pablo Andujar.
Oh, higher, I'm sure. I'm sure he's been seeded at a slam before, like 32 or something.
He's handy. I think. Well, Kim, I go with you.
Yeah, it's definitely higher. I think he's been like high, low, high 20s at the top.
We're going 32 then, are we?
Yeah.
That is absolutely bang on. His highest ranking has been 32.
Kim.
Skill.
Okay, right. We're getting a little bit trickier now because you are now at the halfway point. Your next player is Ramos Vinolas.
Oh, Albert Ramos Vinolas. Surely.
ARV, Albert Ramos Vinolas. Higher, lower, or same than 32?
I feel like he's been just higher, like 24 or something. What do you think, Chris?
I think he's been higher. Definitely higher.
Yeah.
I think
he's
he
been
might.
seeded, hasn't he?
He's definitely been seeded. I think he might have been top 20 at one point. He definitely had a really good season. So I'd say maybe number 19.
He did well at Monte Carlo one year, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he had a really good clay run one year.
Higher?
Yeah, higher.
Yeah.
That is correct. Very, very good.
Woo.
Ramos Vinolas has been a career high of 17
Oh.
in the world.
Good
So
for
there
him.
you go. So that is 4 correct answers. 4 points. Very well done.
Thank you.
So your next player is Marcel Granollers.
Oh, that's tough. So has he been higher than 17?
Higher, lower, or same 17?
Oh, he just said, is that a clue?
I don't think he's been higher. I mean, he has in doubles. He's been like number 1 in doubles, but
What are we on right now?
singles,
What
17.
ranking?
17.
You want 17? I don't think he's been higher. Do you?
I think, if anything, same, but I think maybe more like 21, maybe 19.
I think we go low. Yeah, we go
Lower?
lower.
Not
yeah.
same?
No, I don't
No,
think so.
you can't
because
tempt us, Joel.
You would
into
throw that in just to make us do that. I think we're doing too well. Yes.
Yeah,
So
let's
you're
go
going lower?
Yeah, I think we are.
That is correct, yes. Marcel
Phew.
Granollers career high 19.
Oh, that's very high. Good on
There
him.
you go. So you've got this. I think you've been in this situation before and
Quite
lost
recently
out.
and lost. Yeah, we have.
So this is the pressure moment.
Is this
So
the
Marcel Granollers career high 19.
same? Mm-hmm.
The player that you need to get correct to complete Joel's game is Guillermo Garcia Lopez.
Oh no, what a blast from the past. Gosh, I remember seeing him at Eastbourne, and I think at that time his ranking was probably all right. But would he have been
Higher,
in the top
lower,
20?
or same than 19?
I really don't remember key results from him, if I'm honest.
I kind of feel like he could be the same, but then I think Joel's just...
He doesn't.
Doesn't often do
We've done
the
that before.
same.
We went same on the final one and we got burnt. So I think we go.
Yeah, I think he might be slightly lower though, maybe like 21. I don't know if he ever got
go with
that
your gut
high.
because I do not think he's been higher.
Yeah, let's go lower.
For the win, Joel.
Lower?
Please.
Yeah.
That is correct. Very
Yes!
well done.
Well done, Kim.
Guillermo Garcia Lopez, 23 career high ranking. So
Oh.
your instincts were very, very good, and you have completed Joel's game. Very well done. That's
And
it's
that's
at
the last
second
time we play it, right?
Oh, thanks,
oh,
Joel.
Kim.
Enjoyed
it's all
going
you.
through the Spanish journeymen of the past.
I mean, there's probably
safe to
edition
say they
2.
kind of are to some
There's
extent.
probably edition 2 of Spanish journeymen that could be easily concocted, I think, for a later edition of Joel's
When
game. But
we
very
haven't
well
won
done.
it in a while, Joel, bring them out.
Jimeno Traver
I'll pull it out.
could
Yeah,
feature.
exactly. Mm.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Joel. Listeners, let us know how you got on with that. Be intrigued to hear. And let's now dive into the Tennis Weekly mailbag because we've had Dennis on Instagram get in touch with us. Thank you, Dennis, for your question. Dennis has asked us, hello, team. I saw that Guardian journalist Tumaini Carriol tweeted that he wishes tennis could ban the big three from being used to describe top players, both men and women, for the next 10 years. What do you all think? Agree or disagree? This has come from Tumaini Carriol, who writes for The Guardian, basically saying that the term Big Three is being bandied around too much to describe top players, which I think is a fair comment, actually. What do you both think?
Ooh,
I disagree.
Okay.
We've been guilty of saying it on this podcast.
We say Big Three for
our
critique
hands
of
are
it
up.
last year. We'll say it for anyone.
Yeah, I'll say it for everything. No, I disagree, actually. I think, I actually think it's almost like one of their legacies that they're leaving, that, they're making tennis, I think, more accessible. And I think using language like this and terms like this that have meaning to them and equity to them, for me, make it like easier to understand. And yes, I get that it might feel a bit generalized and a bit overexposed, but for me, I think I like the use of it because I think it opens up tennis just that little bit more when you're reading about it. And in terms of headlines, it gives me that excitement, that interest, and it gives me, I think, like a point of reference as well. We just talked about Iga Swiatek. Is it the Big Three or the Big One? I think there's lots of things that you can talk about around it. And to me, I don't think we have enough of those types of entities at the moment. So I'm personally all for keeping it.
I would say as long as Rafa and Djokovic are playing, surely the phrase can be used in reference, because I think that was very much an era. I've always thought it was a bit of a shame when it comes to, the Big Three, because it does ignore people like Andy Murray and Stan Wawrinka, who obviously picked up slams at a time when the Big Three were playing. And I think that they should get as much recognition for their achievements as, some do of the players now that get the recognition for what they're doing and the hype, because they did it despite the fact the Big Three were around. But I do think maybe we're also guilty of using it a bit too much on here, and we get a bit too excited and we think we're onto something and we aren't. So maybe we should reserve the term for when a legacy has been built.
Yeah, maybe there should be like the big legacy Big Three for the Big Three.
Oh, that's catchy. Really catchy.
Big
The
Three
Legacy
Legacy.
Three.
It sounds like a series that we're going to watch.
Or just the Three Goats, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the Three Goats. There we go. I think a few people would say there is one goat, and I'm not sure they would agree.
Then we'll get the debate between the fandoms.
What do you think, Kim?
Well, I do think there is merit to this argument. I do think we should maybe just let things be. If there genuinely is like a collective at the top who are dominant for X amount of years, then fine, use it. But I think maybe we're so keen to maybe have another top rivalry on both tours.
We just jump to
that
it.
we jump the gun and get too excited. So, but I don't think we should necessarily have a ban on saying it for 10 years. I think that's a bit too extreme. So I'm kind of sitting on the fence a bit. But thank you, Dennis, for your question. I thought it was a very interesting subject there. And yeah, the power of language and words. It's there's something to be said for that. Let's have a look now at some of the talking points, because we had some news in the past week about the grass court season. So take our minds away from the clay. Let's look at the grass for a second. And this isn't happening till 2025. So we have this season, the grass courts, remain sort of the same. But the British events are having a bit of a shake-up for next season. We are getting a WTA event at the Queen's Club in London for the first time in over 50 years, which is going to be interesting. And unfortunately, that does mean that Eastbourne is being downgraded. Surbiton is out. They are no longer having an event, and I think Birmingham are getting a joint event for the first time. So there's gonna be a lot of joint events, but there are some losers as well in this. What are your kind of main, I guess, concerns or positive surprises from this news? Joel, I know you regularly attend a lot of these events. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I think it's always going to be something that has both winners and losers. And I think the winners, from a tennis fan that lives in London, someone who lives and has access to London, I think is going to feel like a big winner, because they're going to get the premier WTA event in the UK, grass court event in the UK, a 500 at the Queen's Club. And that's also going to be followed by the men's event. So going to be lots and lots of tennis for Londoners. Also Wimbledon as well, but I get that for example Eastbourne and the legacy there, it's almost kind of being diminished a little bit by eradicating its status from 500 down to 250. So it's tough because, from my own personal point of view and my kind of living situation, I think it's great. But if you look at it, I think in the context of the UK and opening tennis up, which the LTA, that's effectively them, their mission statement, and trying to encourage people to go and watch these events, magnetizing it and centralizing it to one city, London, I think will leave a lot of disappointed people across the country. So it's sort of tricky, and I can see both sides of the argument, but if you're gonna have to push me, I'm not gonna lie, I sort of love it.
Oh,
Chris, what do you think?
I know, I'm sorry.
I loved Eastbourne.
Joel's selling out.
And I love
I'm a sellout.
Yeah, he
the
is.
Posh Queen's Club.
I think I do like the fact that there are these women's events that happen where they're joint and the women are... it's a bigger tournament for the women. I like the fact that women take centre stage, but I do think a lot of these tournaments, like Nottingham, for example, where I believe it's been a challenger previously and a WTA 250, the finals day, I think the men still get the best slot. So I do think that having a separate event for women actually does allow women to take centre stage, which I do like as a concept. But personally, I think watching tennis for me, I enjoy it much more when I've been to Eastbourne. I really enjoy the unique setting. I think Queens could be a little bit on the corporate side of things, not necessarily as fan first. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a very different vibe, and each person likes a different vibe. But I think it's Surbiton. It's a shame that won't be necessarily a priority here. But I do think I'm glad that the men didn't say no to the women playing before them on the grass, because we could have been in a very strange state of affairs there. So,
Yeah.
exactly. But I mean, it's variations on a theme. A lot of the main ones are still there. And I think I'm always willing to give something new a try. So let's see how it goes with the 500 in London.
Yeah, at least there's still a tournament in Eastbourne, because that's one of my favourite ones, and it won't have the gravitas in terms of the ranking points on offer anymore, but it's not been wiped out completely. So
Exactly.
There's something to be said for that. And we'll see how it goes with the ladies at Queen's. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think Surbiton as well, they are losing out, but they do have quite a small venue, and I think for the number of players there, it's quite tricky logistically to actually put that event on, I think. So I can see why that might have gone.
Yeah, I know. I was there last year, saw Andy Murray there. He's on the entry list, I believe, for this year, and I guess that would be dependent on how well he does at the French Open. But it's a racket club, and when you do a combined event, men's and women's tennis on at the same time in a space like that, it can feel a little bit cramped, I think, at times. So although I was a little bit shocked to see that Surbiton was taken off the calendar, the more I sort of reflected on it, I sort of actually understood it from that perspective.
And the media side of things, it's a lot to handle. A lot to handle from the media side of things when big players play it, and all of these events are very able to handle a lot of crowds and a lot of attention.
Yeah, one year they had terrible trouble with the toilets as well. So I was.
That's not in this plan, Kim. How
no,
many portaloos?
I don't know. Have they considered logistics of labs?
We'll pass that on to the LTA.
Yeah, absolutely. French Open wildcards. Let's have a talk about them, because they've been announced this week, and perhaps unsurprisingly, the vast majority of them have gone to French players. I think 6 out of 8 on both the women's and men's side have gone to French players. We do have the likes of Richard Gasquet, Pierre Hugues Herbert in there, some old school names for the French. Alizé Cornet, of course, Mladenovic as well. So players that they absolutely want to have playing at their home slam. They've also got the reciprocal wildcards for Tennis Australia and USTA, so Ilya Tomljanovic being one of them, and Sasha Vickery. And also we've got Moreno de Albaran and, I don't know this player, A. Walton, who's Australian. He's the only one I'm not particularly sure on.
Kim, when are you going to say Dominic Thiem?
Dominic Thiem, yeah. So, sorry, shall I cut to the chase?
Emma Raducanu. I'm waiting.
So
I'm waiting.
Dominic Thiem has not been given a wild card, which perhaps is the most controversial decision here. Do we think he should have got one, given that he's on his retirement circuit now, and as a former finalist twice over? Or do you think, well, actually, they're doing the right thing going to home players and maybe younger players?
Well, I hope that we're all of the same opinion here, because we asked our listeners, and an overwhelming number of approximately 500 people who voted said that they thought that it should have given him a wild card. It was 88.7% said that they should have given him a wild card. And I personally are completely of that opinion, because I do think that if the argument was give it to the young talents, give it to the up-and-coming French players, then I would say, sure, I understand that as a point, but they've given it to players who are also on farewell tours, like Richard Gasquet, like Elise Cornet.
Yep.
Mladenovic has not had form at all recently either. Neither has Herbert, really. And so I think it's very different. And this is a point that Joel made last week, where Wimbledon could do things differently because they aren't federation owned in that sense. So they can give wildcards to players who've had good form. There's a lot more flexibility there. Whereas clearly the requirement is that any wildcard that can be given goes to someone French, irrespective of their form. And I think that is an institutional issue, because I do think that Dominic Thiem being in the draw would be a big draw on the grounds and for fans. And I think he deserves it anyway. So
Is there an argument to say, just following on from that maybe the French Tennis Federation saw their qualifying event and were thinking, hang on, how do we create some noise and pizzazz around the qualifying event? And actually having Dominic Thiem in that draw, and that, in theory could be his send-off, where he's the main man, as opposed to maybe getting lost in a round one match, on some court, along with lots and lots of other matches. Is there a sort of argument that you could see there?
Could be, but I do think the reason why he actually did announce that he was retiring at the end of this year before the French Open was to make a play for the wildcards, because I think he knew it was so hard to get a wildcard, and then the court of public opinion is very much on his side. So I think there is a benefit for the French, in the sense that the French players always draw a big French crowd, and Dominic Thiem draws a crowd to the qualifiers. So for them, there's not much of a reason, I guess, to give Dominic Thiem what everyone thinks he deserves. Kim?
I mean, it would be nice to see Thiem there, I think, given what he's given to the tournament in the past. But I think he himself has said that he's kind of fine with not getting it. So,
and he could still be there. He could
then
still be there. I mean, he won through today in round one of qualies from
Made
a set
it hard
down,
though, didn't he,
Yeah,
Joel?
I was like, oh God, where's this going? But I mean, it would be it would feel a lot sweeter, won't it, if he can make the main draw and kind of go out on his own accord, having done it the hard way. So there's still that.
He was very classy in his response as well, wasn't he? So he took it very well, and I think everyone's got their fingers crossed, and if he does make it, it's even more of a story, and maybe it'll be the form that he needs playing qualifying.
Absolutely. And I mean, incidentally, no wildcards either for Simona Halep, Caroline Wozniacki, Emma Raducanu. Do you agree with those decisions? I mean, Raducanu has pulled herself out of qualies
yes,
this week, so
she has.
She's not.
I'm not sure
ready
about that one
to play.
Go on, Joel. Tell us what you think.
To me, that feels a little bit like I was only going to play if I got the wild card into the main draw, and she didn't get it, and for whatever reason, she's like, maybe it's not like this, but the way I was reacting to it was like, does she feel like she's too good to play qualies, and actually she'd just rather focus on the next block, on the grass courts?
I can't think why would she skip it? I honestly don't know why.
I know, that's what I don't understand. That's what I'm still trying to wrestle with.
It's not fitness related. It's about laying the foundations, a healthy block before the grass.
Did she think she was going to get into the main draw automatically? Because she was very close. I think she was like 3 or 4 entries off, I think.
It's just so frustrating as a Raducanu fan, and I will be a Raducanu defender as much as I can on all things, pretty much, probably at the annoyance of listeners. But this one, I just think she played such great tennis this clay season. We saw her play some of the best tennis she's played. She said she was playing some of the best tennis she's ever played, and then she doesn't play the French. Doesn't even go to qualifying, which is something in which she's seen some really good results previously on that run to the 2021 US Open.
Well, I was going to say, hang on.
What are we doing here? She's a tennis player. You've got to play tennis, and you've got to
get your
tennis.
hands dirty and play these matches. And
exactly.
I think she's been like, no, I'm not going to get my hands dirty.
And I hope she's okay. I hope it's got nothing to do with those reasons. But on the Wozniacki side of things, she is very. She's not a clay player. it's not a happy hunting ground for her, and she had some injury concerns, and so did Halep. So I'm not surprised. They may have also made themselves unavailable for the wild card. Potentially, they might not have applied for it. So I think not too much of a surprise there. But Raducanu, I hope that she plays a full grass season, and then we will be forgetting the fact she skipped the French.
Yeah, let's hope we can forgive and forget, because she'll do wonders at Wimbledon. And let's have a look at what's happening this week now, because we do have the big event that Geneva has become, because Novak Djokovic is the top seed there. Casper Ruud is playing. Clayla Fritz as well is there. Incidentally and interestingly, Novak Djokovic could well face Andy Murray in his first match.
It's not
but
looking
Andy
likely,
Murray
Kim.
is down to Yannick Hanfmann, but I think they stopped for rain. So heavy rain out in Geneva at the moment. But that would have been fun and games, wouldn't it? Them two playing against each other. I mean, do you think Djokovic is going to get the form that he needs, that he's looking for here, with the matches that he will have in his draw here?
A Taylor Fritz clash could be beneficial to him, potentially.
To me, it's a sign of the times, and arguably maybe the desperation that Djokovic needs this to get form to go into Paris. And he might be thanking, the looking at the draw, how competitive it is for a 250 the week before a slam. Because if it wasn't this loaded, I think, and it wasn't this competitive, I'd almost be like, what is the useness? Yes, but the fact that there are some competitive people in there, say Casper Ruud, we all know his record at a 250 level. It could give him the jump start that he needs, but the fact that he's had such rogue losses, it feels, of late, I feel like at the moment I've got to take Djokovic one match at a time, and I don't think Yannick Hanfmann's going to be any sort of slouch, in his first match. So
will he finish the tournament though,
quite
Joel?
Tricky.
Or will he do what Naomi Osaka does and a lot of the players just before? If they have a good match, he might play Taylor Fritz, for example, get a win, pull out before the final so he can get to Paris to prepare. I'm not sure he'll complete the tournament.
Well, Chris
That's my
has
prediction.
marked his words,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong, though.
We've also got Strasbourg, a WTA event.
500.
500, yeah. Marketa Vondrousova, top seed at that one. Haddad Meyer, second seed. We've got Danielle Collins there, Madison Keys. So looking at the Americans there, although they don't want to overplay, do they? I feel like Collins has played quite a lot. You don't want her to have a strong week and then sort of fade early at the French, do you? But we'll see. We'll see on that one. And Lyon also happening for the men 250 event. Ugo Humbert is top seed there at a home crowd. Manarino for third seed. We haven't mentioned him for a while on the podcast.
He's waiting for the indoor season to resume.
He's not a great play. Yeah, for a Frenchman, I don't think clay's his strongest surface.
So we'll see. And there's also Rabat, like a flurry of tournaments, WTA event happening before the French. We've got Wei Yuan of China as top seed and Anna Blinkova second seed. Saras Rivas Tormo has beaten Harriet Dart there already for the loss of just 2 games.
This Rabat draw, talk to me. I swear any one of these players could win it. I feel like it's such a level playing
Not
field.
Harriet Dart. She's already gone out.
I've got to be honest, I did see it and I thought, this is the qualifying draw for Rabat. And then I realised it was the actual Rabat draw. But, Trevisan...
That
she's
Paris
my pick.
125 draw was stronger.
Paris 125 was pretty spicy. So I would say if I was watching one this week, I probably would have my eyes on the Djokovic show heading into the French.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that's where most of the eyes will be. But it'll be interesting to see who's got some good form in the early stages this week. Perhaps you want to pick some dark horses or picks once the French Open draw comes out later this week as well.
Will Geneva be allowing water bottles into the stadium for Djokovic's match? That's the question. That's
Mandatory
the investigative
helmets.
Journalism that I want to get. I want to get under.
I'll
under
find
the
out for
skin
you,
on.
Joel.
Some nice Swiss mountain water will have to be bottled and given out somewhere.
From the Dolomites.
Yes.
Well, that's Italy, Joel.
Yeah.
not
Oh,
Switzerland,
sorry.
but yeah.
Oh, there we go. We can get through the episode without me
A
getting my
geographical
geography.
blunder. Yeah.
A geographical blunder. But let's end it there. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come from the ATP and WTA tours.
We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. So if you like what you're hearing, then do make sure to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and X. And the handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. You can purchase Tennis Weekly merch, and there's just one of our original caps remaining. So get it whilst you can. And the link for that is etsy.com/shop/tennisweeklypodcast. You can also email the show, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or do check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Friday morning, UK time, at Tennis Weekly HQ for our French Open draw preview. Already looking forward to that one. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.